everyone, it's Jen again. So this week I have been working on rebuilding the original Arcane Dice Wars after having finished the Arcane Dice Wars of Villain's Heart. So I knew when I stopped working on this project to work on the side game, after I had kind of implemented the beast system and the frenzy mechanic, that my programming, or my lack of programming, my code was kind of becoming a giant mess, and it wasn't going to be very sustainable going forward. Like, how I created the whole battle system worked with having a kind of small set number of enemies to choose from, but if I wanted to expand my game out to have more enemy types and more mechanics, that it was going to had to quickly spiral out of control, because that's kind of what had already started happening with the beasts that I implemented for the sewers. So my major problem, and I don't even know if I'm expressing it correctly because again I'm not a programmer, was that I had these objects that had these properties that the units had, that the game needed to evaluate in order to have the battle system function properly. So the enemies had to have a name, they had to have their dice value, their element, their faction, their health, and these properties needed to be able to be kind of randomized. So as well as the player characters units needed to be able to also be kind of variable, like you need to be able to interchange these values depending on what unit was actually like deployed or which enemy was deployed. And I wasn't able to like come up with a system that like worked the way that I thought it should. So that was like a major hurdle when I was first creating the game, and I just kind of got around it by doing these like conditional checks, like, oh, I have this random enemy in the front. I don't know what enemy this is because it's just a random result. But I'm going to check and see, is it a knight? Is it a rogue? Is it a priest? Is it a mage? And then I'm going to like have it like do a certain thing. And so the more different types that I had, the more condition checks that I would have to do. And so this was actually a more simplified version of like, this was like the original code that I was trying to check to see if the enemy would be frenzied. So the condition of frenzy was that the opposing faction was not deployed. So like if you were fighting a serpent, then the player would have to deploy a mage, and if there was no mage, then the beast would become frenzied, and when they were frenzied they would have like these stat boosts or these dice boosts. And so because I didn't know how to like have this be this, whatever this enemy front was, I didn't know how to make that kind of update during the random selection during the game. I was forced to kind of like just check to see what type of a beast what enemy type did it choose. Was it an earth serpent? Was it an air serpent? Was it a fire serpent? Was it a water serpent? And so, you know, every one of these monsters had to get it checked to see, and then had to check the player to see if they had the correct counter in their party. And so it was 120 lines of code just to do this condition check to see if like the frenzy mechanic was going to if the monster was going to be frenzied. And as I've been going back this week and fixing it, I managed to squash that 120 lines of code down to 12. So I'm very pleased with my progress. So basically all this here, blah, 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 checking to see if all the, with all the different possible beasts was condensed to this. And this is what I'm going to be trying to go back and sort of fix in my game where I can to make the game more expandable going forward. Like, I'm not going to go back and change these systems in A Villain's Heart, because A Villain's Heart only had like the humanoid characters and there wasn't that many different enemy types. There was no frenzy mechanic. It was a much more simplified combat system. So like having these if-else statements or whatever, these condition checks, like worked for it. But in this case, like having these variables that are kind of like containing the object properties of the randomized unit is working out well. And again, I don't regret going forward with like this big blah 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 line of code, because it took me this whole development process. Like, it took me since I started this kind of whole Arcane Dice Wars project back in November of 2022 to find this solution. And if I had waited until I had perfected this combat system, then I wouldn't have like an entire game finished. I wouldn't have like 150,000 words. So I personally don't like to get stuck on like optimizing one portion of the game, because I derive enjoyment from all different aspects of the game. Like, I like trying to figure out how to program something, and I also like, writing the story, and I like doing the artwork, and so I don't like to get caught up or hung up on just like one part where I just get like kind of stuck and I make no progress forward. I knew that I would always have the opportunity to go back and change things. So that is what I'm doing right now. And you can see here, this is how I have created my kind of random enemy deployment, along with being able to read the properties and have the sprites be interchangeable. So for the regular kind of enemy deployment, the label starts here, where you're going to be first calling the enemy deploy. So this is going to be the call statement. I think, yeah. So this is where I have these lists set up for having a selection of enemies to randomly get from the front, the mid, the rear, and then this is the guild deployment. So for this unit enemy deploy, we are populating these lists with these possible choices. For the front row, we have all the different types of knights, the different types of rogues. These are the objects that are declared in the beginning here. So these are my like beast objects, and then we have my my unit objects here with their name, their dice, their element, their faction, their health points, etc. So once I've created that list from here, once I've created these lists, for here is like the humanoid enemies, and then here is the monster enemies. Then I'm going to determine the difficulty of it, and then this is the random selection from the list. And then once I have this, like the random enemy front, the enemy front variable here, I'm going to get the attributes. This is what I learned, that this was the part that was getting me stuck, that I couldn't figure out how to get the program to get a object property of like a randomized unit. So I ended up making this variable container for the frontline unit to get their nickname, because this nickname is like that kind of lowercase shortened version that all my my image files are. So I will use those, the reference to the nickname, to go into where I get the sprites. So that's what this is here. So it'll know to display the sprite based on what that that nickname is. It's gonna like throw it in right there, and then it'll bring up this eSprite underscore the nickname underscore idle. So I go back to deployment here. That's the nickname. The name here is gonna be where in the game it gives the uppercase and separation. So if it's Water Knight, it'll be like water with a capital W space Knight with a capital K, the way that it would be referenced in game, because before I would just have the nickname being shown because I was using that to like bring up the images. But now I'm able to bring up their like proper display of their name and not just their shorthand version. Their dice here is going to be assigned to the frontline unit's dice. The element of the random unit is going to be set there, and then the faction being like their mage, priest, knight, etc., and then their health point. And so then their health pool will be increased by, this value. And I guess like before, I just didn't understand why you couldn't just reference, like why can't I just make random, why can't I just make enemy front unit and then just like do enemy front unit dot element in order to show the element. But for whatever reason, you have to use this get attribute in order to assign that to a variable container. So again, this is what I ended up having in order to populate all this information based on like the random selection of the enemy. Before, I was doing a condition check to see is the enemy front like an Earth Knight? Then if so, then this is going to be their dice value, their element value, their faction value, etc. And so I had to go through and check to see for each one of them which one it was, and it was more code. And it doesn't look too bad here, but once you start adding more enemy types, then like the 4 element and the 4, archetypes, then it quickly starts to become out of control. And then when I was doing the, where it was checking for the frenzy, because I had different conditions to try to check, like, okay, so what I ended up doing to shortening this whole statement, that was like the front if the enemy front is an earth serpent, then we're going to be checking to see if the player has deployed a mage in either the front, mid, or rear, and if so, or if they haven't, that's what this exclamation point question mark is, if not. If it does not equal mage, then they were going to become frenzied, and I had to go through for each monster type to check. In each position, too. That's what made it so long. Because you could have an Earth Serpent that was deployed in the front, or in the mid, or in the rear, and so I had to do that for each type in each position. Versus here, I've created, so I have my, my enemy random deployment here, list. For my beasts, I also have this get their attribute for how many turns until they frenzy, and then for what class subdues them. So when you look at their object property, or I'm sorry, here, we look at the monsters here. So the Earth Serpent type is a Knight type, and then I have here that they're weak against Mage. So that's their subdue type. So when we go here to this check frenzy, oh no, I'm sorry, that's the wrong. If we go here to the calculate frenzy, if the front subdue type is none, which is in the case of any humanoid unit, or if the subdue type is equal to the faction type of the front row unit, or the mid row unit, or the rear view unit, because for subduing it doesn't have to match up the same position, then they are not going to be frenzied. However, if their subdue type is not either in the front, mid, or rear deployment, or if it's not none, like if it's an Earth Serpent that's looking for a mage type to subdue them, and none of these are equal mage, then they're going to be frenzied. And so then it's checking that for the mid row, and then the final row. And the way that looks like for the displayed sprites is we can see here if the front row is frenzied or is not frenzied, then they're going to have the regular sprite. If they are frenzied, though, then they're going to have this frenzy version of the sprite. Which again is a lot shorter than if I were to check each type to see if it was possibly frenzied. Like, oh my goodness, like this code used to be so long. I think I still have like it, yeah, where I was going through a condition check for each possible combination of having a frenzied monster, because I could not figure out how to bring up like those object properties to make them, I guess, like dynamic or changeable. So this opened like a whole new realm of possibilities for me, for my programming going forward. I feel like I've made some significant progress. But the way that I found this solution, and maybe it's not the most optimal solution, but it's a heck of a lot better than where I was coming from. And I understand it fully. I'm not just like copying somebody else's code. The way that I found out like how to go about trying to make this happen, and trying to make this happen, like, was a total fluke, where I just happened to be watching a Godot tutorial on like how to make a puzzle game. And when they were talking about the puzzle pieces, they were using get and set attribute, which I had never heard of before. And just for whatever reason, like my research in like Ren'Py and my research in like Python, like when I was trying to find out like how I could kind of accomplish what I was trying to do to like reference these object properties or attributes. I'm sorry, again, I'm not a programmer, so I don't really know like the correct way of like wording everything. I just wasn't able to find like the answers that I was looking for. And so when I saw this Godot tutorial talking about this, I started researching the get and set attribute. I started watching some different like videos on it, and then I just started experimenting with it, and I was really surprised at how quickly I got it working. Like, I don't know why it was such a mental block that I didn't understand these things before, but like for whatever reason, it was just, I was able to get it in that moment. And so yeah, I'm very excited about like having this new shiny tool in my toolbox to go back and just make a lot of my code more optimal and more interchangeable. And I'm having like a lot of fun with it. And unfortunately, this means like for anybody who is playing Arcane Dice Wars, the old game files will no longer be compatible with like the version that I'm making, but I am going to be rewriting a lot of it as well. And I'm thinking of like trying to revise some of the art assets too, to make the whole experience improved, so that it's not just that I'm going through and like changing some stuff under the hood and the experience will be the same. I'll be rewriting this, rewriting story, rewriting dialogue, and making improvements to the art and everywhere, so the experience everywhere should be better. So I'm really excited about this. I've just been playtesting, plugging stuff in, so with this arrangement here, in order to counter these mage bats here, I will need to have a priest. So I think I'm going to go ahead and put an earth priest there. This I would need a rogue for to counter, and then I think I can just put anyone I want in the last slot here, so I'm just going to put Bailiff since he's going to
this could
give
be
me a nice So we have the reintroduction of the wager system.
Double bonus. Double bonus. Double bonus. Skill trigger.
Take this opportunity to end this.
Double bonus. Skill trigger.
Is that all?
And see, that's capitalized now, that air. Arachnid. Before it was like all just like one lowercase word that was all smashed together because it was like the nickname that was being used for like the art assets and everything.
Whoa, lucky.
Now it's displaying properly. Those are displaying properly with the uppercase.
Beautifully executed, my lady.
Those are also displaying it properly with the update. And so then I can also switch locations and it's going to populate my randomized list differently. So now where you've got the more typical like humanoid enemies. I don't have to worry about countering faction as much since they're not going to frenzy. Although I guess I should probably show what frenzy looks like. I could do that. I'd rather have another rogue.
Let's roll. Double bonus. Skill trigger.
Is that all?
Double bonus. Whoa, lucky.
Let's go back to the enemies and we're going to show you what frenzy look like and make sure that my frenzy check is working properly. So the earth serpents always the serpents are always a good one to have frenzy because they're not really that dangerous. So I'm going to not counter with a mage. Okay, and let's go ahead and counter. Let's go ahead and have some rogues. And then, yeah, I guess I could put a... I guess I could put a knight here to counter that rogue here. And then we don't want to put a mage here, so I'm just going to put a priest.
Let's roll.
And so we can see that this serpent is frenzied, because I did not put a mage.
Double bonus. Double bonus. Double bonus. Double bonus. Double bonus. Double bonus.
Oof. Ruin, where's your retaliation? I guess even serpents can be dangerous when they're frenzied.
Double bonus. Double bonus. Double bonus.
Ah, it's such a good roll. Dang it. The frenzy. I think that frenzy crit.
Double bonus.
Oof. Not a single proc.
Try again.
I'll have to check the code and make sure his skill trigger is working properly. Anyways, that's where I've been this week, and I'm super excited to be jumping right back in. and I will keep you guys updated. I hope what I was saying made some sense. I don't really know. Because again, I'm not a programmer, so I can only just kind of like meander around like my thought process. But I'm thinking maybe some other people who don't have a programming background, they might kind of follow some of my logic. Okay, take care guys. Have a great week, and don't forget to enjoy the process.